No, I wanna ask you because you told me the advice that you would give to somebody, but could you tell me why you love Jesus back?
Because he's brought me through a lot of stuff.
I remember staying at Alvin and Michelle's, my aunt and uncle, while mom and dad went to the hospital, and Rochelle came in and told us what the situation was with Rebekah and that she would be paralyzed. But at that time it really didn't mean that much to me. I didn't know how to interpret that.
Your spirit had awakened our lifeless hearts to see the King in brilliant glory, revealed in majesty. We were ruined in your presence and tearing at the seams. Our eyes had gazed upon the King of Kings.
Arlene and I were young, and when we started in the Gerber Assembly together in 1966, we had a purpose to have children when we were young, and then be able to travel among the meetings and do gospel work in the areas of meetings. We started by going to a little town just north of San Francisco, and there we spent 2 weeks one summer going door to door, established a little house meeting, went back there the next year, spent another 2 weeks going door to door, and the house meeting kind of grew to 10 or 12 people. And then Harold Thompson took over there, and then our next summer trip we went to Missoula, Montana, and there we spent a couple of weeks doing door-to-door work. And then the next summer we went to Arizona and spent a couple of weeks in Arizona. And it was in Arizona that we found out she was pregnant, but there was trouble. And she had trouble all the way through the pregnancy. And our doctor gave us a little pamphlet that said when you have this much trouble, there's usually something that the body's trying to get rid of the baby. So expect that there's going to be problems. So that July, we were at counselors at the Camp Tehama, and she was pretty far along, because Rebekah was born in August, and we were up there in July, and she started having labor pains. And Harold Thompson brought us down the hill in our van, about 100 miles an hour through the turns and everything, and we got down there, and they were able to stop the labor pains at that night. But it was soon after that the baby was born. And sure enough, there was a terrible hole in her back, probably 2 to 2.5 inches round, and right at the bottom of her buttocks, or top of her buttocks, bottom of her back, so that her spine was not completely formed. The doctor told me, came in and took me aside and said to me, he says, your baby's not going to live. But there is a doctor in Redding that has been performing surgeries on this type of problem, and it's possible that he could help her. But I would recommend that you just let her die. But he said, do you want me to tell your wife, or would you? And I said, well, I can tell you that my wife and I would both want to try everything to keep the baby alive. So the next morning, they wanted to rush her up to Redding. She was born in Red Bluff. They wanted to rush her up to Redding, where there was more medical ability to take care of a child like that. On the way, it was about 100 and some degrees. They wanted to put her in an ambulance, but we were young, didn't have money, and didn't have insurance. So we opted to take the family up, my mother, Darlene, and the baby, up in a car. We got almost to Redding, maybe 5 miles from the hospital, and this car comes up alongside of me on the freeway and is motioning me to turn off, and I didn't want to turn off because I'm in a hurry to get to the hospital. But they were insistent that we turn off, so I pulled over, and as I slowed down, the steam from my hood just come right out of the windshield. I could hardly see. And so evidently that's what was going into the back, and the car behind me could see that and was trying to stop me. The minute I pulled over and stopped, a highway patrol pulled up, saw that we had an emergency, took my wife and the baby, and went on to the hospital. The man who stopped me took me to a place to get a belt, because that's what happened. The belt came off of the fan, and it heated up my motor. So we got, when I got there, they had the baby already, Rebekah already in an isolation thing. And that's where she stayed for several months. The only way we could touch her is to put our hands inside of this isolation box. We actually couldn't touch her skin except through that, and that was kind of like with gloves. And that's how we had to hold our baby for 3 months and talk to her. I developed a real passion for babies after that. I wanted to hold everybody's baby, because evidently there was some kind of emotional thing that I lost from not being able to hold my own baby. But they operated, and she came through, but it's been a lot of, I don't know if she's going to live or die, the doctor would say. And from one day to the next, we never knew. There was no assurance that she would live from one day to the next. And then when she kind of got stabilized, they didn't think that she would live very long. Well, she's 45 years old and has heard that story time and time again. And some of the doctors that have worked on her are already gone, but she's still here.
So you say because you're handicapped, have you been like that your whole life, Beck?
Yes.
Can you
Ever
tell me
since
about
I
it?
was born. Ever since I was born.
Ever since you were born.
Yes.
What does that mean, that you're handicapped?
Well, they, actually, my dad and my mom were, they were gonna, try to find a doctor who would, have my dad come watch the delivery. And he was there, and then the doctor said, well, I have to come. I need to tell you something. So then he talked to my dad. Then he had my dad and him tell my mom that I was paralyzed.
She was very active as a baby. We got braces for her, and she was able to walk around stiff-legged, throwing hip by hip. And one day she went out to the neighbor's yard right out here and fell in a little hole, and fell over and broke her arm. So she's had a pretty hard life. When she got to be a little older, the doctors finally told us that not to brace her up anymore, and because it was too hard on her heart. So then she got into a wheelchair and did real well with the wheelchair for quite some time. But one of the things that was, Darlene and I tried to keep her as normal as possible, and I probably pushed that a little too much, putting a lot of pressure on the family, taking her to the coast, to the mountains, and wherever we went, we took her.
I think once I got to a point in life where I had children and saw some of those challenges just raising kids, the perspective changed dramatically, looking back at what Mom and Dad went through, what we all went through. But it really seemed like that was just part of everyday life. The Mom and Dad did a great job not presenting it as an obstacle, really. They made it as normalized as I think any other sibling. It was just we had different challenges like any family as far as we were concerned.
And but we always went to the conferences. We always tried to stay as doing all the things that we did before. And I have to say that looking back at it, it was probably more than I should have been expecting Darlene to do. But she was a trooper, and she did that. But our plans was to have 2 children, Donnie and Tammy, and then when we got to be around 40 years old and they would be up and old enough to be on their own, we wanted to go from one meeting to the next and do what we did when we were younger. But the Lord had different plans for us, because Rebekah took us to another area of evangelistic work, and that was one hospital after another. She's had 30 operations or more, some of them long and tedious. Went to Stanford one time thinking we were going to be there a week or so. Was there 19 days. And we talked to very brain surgeons, commented about Jesus Christ was our Savior and Lord, got to talk to nurses and people that worked with their braces. The medical world. God used us in the medical world. We thought we were going to be going door to door and evangelizing door to door, but the Lord wanted us to evangelize the medical world. And so people with ability to operate on the brain and surgeons of all sorts, bones, high-profile doctors from Stanford, and we witnessed to them. And when Rebekah began to be able to understand what was going on, she was very much a witness as well.
There's like mom and dads that have their kids in the hospital, so we talk to them about the Lord, and the nurses and the doctors too. And there's only one time, like when I was in the hospital, that I had to get my IV redone, and I asked the phlebotomist if we could pray, and she said no. And I said, well, I'd rather he did. I'd rather have my dad do it. And she goes, okay. And she never came back. I had another phlebotomist that did it.
2 different times we ran into a nurse down in Stanford. This nurse in Stanford said, no, I don't need you to pray. And Rebekah said, whether you need him to pray or not, I want him to pray. And she said, then I won't do it. And she left the room. And pretty soon here come another nurse. And then Rebekah said, I want my dad to pray for me. So we prayed, and everything went well. 2 times we had people say, I don't want you to pray for me. I don't need it. And both times Rebekah just rose up and said, I want him to pray. And so she knew where her help came from. And she didn't want to face anything. And still today, she wants people to pray for her. And many times when I'm getting ready to go to meetings, she'll say, please have them pray for me.
What do you think about knowing that there's lots of people that love you and pray for you?
That I like that. I'd like to just to make sure. Because sometimes I get really sick and I'm like, are people really praying for me? But then they call me, oh yeah, we got you on the prayer chain, so that really lifts my spirits.
So what would you tell somebody that is going to have to go through something really hard in this life? What advice would you give them, Beck?
That one day that we won't be in this body anymore, that we're gonna be going to heaven. So right now is the time to accept the Lord as your Savior, because it's sad when he'll say, I never knew you.
She is one who is not ashamed to let her light shine, let you know what she believes. And if she thinks that, like some of the family when coming, she doesn't think that they're doing what is correct, why, she lets them know that she wants to question what they're doing and give her an answer.
Our hands had crafted idols, our lips had spoken lies. Every wayward thought we had against us testified. But you were rich in mercy to provide what you demand. And now on Christ, the solid rock we stand.
There was times when I thought maybe it was too much for Darlene. It was almost like, how much can a person take? And yet she endured. And that's the way she was right up to the last of her life. She was always concerned about the family, and especially Rebekah. And that's one of the things that she said to me 2 days before she died. She went unconscious, and right before she went unconscious, she told me, she says, "I'm not making it, am I?" And I said, "No, you're not." And then we both cried. And then she said to me, she says, "I don't like leaving you and the kids, but I want you to know that I'm ready to go home and be with the Lord." From that point on, she never spoke another word to me. She kind of went into a kind of a coma. And then after 2 days of struggling to breathe, 4:30 in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning, I started talking to the Lord about Darlene and telling, even though she couldn't respond, I believe that she may be hearing me. So I started reminding her about the hope we have of coming into the presence of God, and how He has assured us that heaven is our part, and that we have a place there, and that He's waiting for us, and that you don't need to fear death, that death is just a door into the very presence of God, and where there's joy and pleasures forevermore. And so I talked to her that way till 6 in the morning, and then at 6 in the morning I said to God, "Today, Lord, wouldn't you please take her home?" And that very afternoon, all the family and everybody that was around her bed. And I went out to get something out of the garden, and I think that Jake came out, told me that she had opened her eyes and to come in, and I ran in there, and she had already closed her eyes when I got back in, but her breathing was not struggling anymore, but it was very soft. And so I put my ear down close to her mouth, and so I could hear as long as she was breathing, and she was breathing along, and it kept getting weaker and weaker until it just stopped. I raised my head up and looked into her face, and it was like the face of an angel, just a beautiful, comfortable look on her face, and her face was almost like smooth, and I really believe that she saw the angels coming. I have no proof of that, but just by the way that how it affected her looks on her face, something changed that made her feel comfortable and at peace. And I thank God for having that memory in my mind, because for 1.5 years, 13 months it was actually, she struggled to live under great deal of trouble and difficulties. But she fought right to the end. But nevertheless, she could say, I'm ready to go. She never lost hope, never lost her confidence of what she believed and what she looked forward to, but felt bad in having to leave Rebekah, probably mostly because she'd taken care of her so long. At that time, it was 40-some years. And now Rebekah was able to get past that, losing her mother, but still difficult time for her. It was shortly after that or just prior to that she actually couldn't be in her wheelchair anymore because it was too hard on her heart. So she's been bound to her bed, and that's been difficult for her. There's times when she says, I'm tired. Dad, I'm tired.
At this point in life, she's not just paralyzed from the waist down, but she used to be able to get, in and out of the bed, just go anywhere, basically. Now she's bedridden. And so her life is much more confined. She has a lot of times when she doesn't feel well. And she's just feeling crummy. And she can't seem to get away from her pain. She has all kinds of medications. And those medications don't always do the job. So she's laying there. Most of us, if we're agitated with pain, we can move around. We can go from one place to the next. She can't. She's stuck. And so she lives with that pain, and it really has an effect on her. But what she always resorts to, always, is prayer. She will call. She will ask me to pray for her regularly. Would you please pray for me? So she knows where the source of her hope is, where her comfort is, and where to turn. In life, a lot of people don't know where to turn. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of hardships, and they don't turn to the source of their deliverance.
If you can be content and encouraged, you can get through almost anything. And for years, that's what I would pray for her, that she would just be content and encouraged. And I think she does really good to lay in a bedroom 24 hours a day. Sometimes it will be a year, or maybe once in a while months, that she's even left that bedroom, and the Lord has given her contentment there. And so here a lot of us can get out and run around and do stuff, and we might not be content and think about how the Lord can come into that little room and give her happiness and joy. And it's not the big things, it's little tiny things that give her joy. So that's been a good example.
Rebekah's attitude is always, when she's not nauseated and just wanting to throw up, when she's good, she's always happy. I mean, she's always got a smile on her face. She's always able to generate conversation, and she always wants me to read to her in the mornings, and she wants me to pray for her, pray with her, and she's always asking people to pray, and she says, what can I do? And I said, Rebekah, you know that you can't get out, but I said, how you do get out is the phone. Call people, encourage them. And so she has people that she calls on a regular basis and encourages them to look to the Lord. And so she's amazing. I call her my miracle daughter. She never has an attitude of feeling sorry for herself, but has accepted that this is her testimony to be content. And I've always, from her time she was a little girl, I said, one day when we go to heaven, your body will be healed. And you'll walk and you'll jump. And she says, I don't care to walk or jump. I said, well, you'll be able to. And you'll be able to do everything anyone else does. And I said, it'd be a wonderful time to see the Lord face to face and awake with his likeness.
Father, all my earthly aims in time will turn to dust. Let me learn that loss is gain for those who know your love. And all the treasures of this world will never satisfy. You alone are endless joy, so I cling to Christ. You alone are endless joy, so I cling to Christ.
This is something Becky wrote when she was young. I'm not sure how old, that Mom had saved, and I came across it not too long ago. One wish for me, Lord, one wish for me before you take me home to live with you would be that I would be able to walk along the seashore in a nice white dress, and to walk along with my family on the beach, and feel the sand between my toes, and to watch the sunset go upon the sea. If I were to have one wish, Lord.
What's something you would tell your mom right now if you could?
Oh, I miss her. And I wish she could come back. But I know the Lord, I know she wouldn't want to come back. And if she wanted to, she would want to come back. Because heaven is so much wonderful than this earth. Even though we think it's wonderful at times, it's more wonderful to be in the presence of the Lord. You know what Rebekah stands for? I'll tell you. It stands for, it means bound. So I'm bound. I was bound in a wheelchair. Now I'm bound to this bed.
Are you looking forward to not being bound anymore?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Do you have a thought that you could give Rebekah as far as encouragement goes?
A thought? Just that I love her, and I'm thankful. Her existence shaped my whole life. My whole life is revolved around my sister. And I'm thankful that I can serve the Lord right here. I don't have to go to Reading, to Chico, to China. I get to serve the Lord right here, close to my home, and I'm very thankful I can serve the Lord.
If I were going to encourage Rebekah, again, it's that perseverance, to be strong, to focus on the Lord in those situations, but also remember that she has value. Being in a bed, you may not think that you have value, that you have purpose, that you're useful. So I would want to encourage her that she is very useful to the family, to the church, to others in a very powerful way that only she can bring she's uniquely useful to God, and I would encourage her to continue to use her words of encouragement, the phone calls. She's called me up and said, "Hey, Donnie, I'm just letting you know I'm praying for you." And in that moment, to hear that is a great encouragement, that she thought enough to let me know she's praying for me. And I know she calls people all the time. And it's good for people too to think about her needs and what they can do to add to her life, to make her life have more meaning. And so continue to be available to people. Let them come. Let them serve in that way. Minister to you. And as they minister to you, you will be ministering to them.